Hazel, lovely to have you with us. If you just want to introduce yourself, that would be fantastic. Thanks.
Yes, good morning, Andy. I'm Hazel McDonnell, and I currently teach primary 6-7 at Rothes Primary School in Murray. I only have 18 pupils this year, which has made life just wonderful because I've got time to really spend with each and every child, which is great.
We're really delving deep here now, but because this is always a fascinating question. What was your favourite band when you were growing up? And I realise that's almost a way into asking how old you are, but that's not what I'm doing.
Well, they're before my time, actually. Led Zeppelin, and they're still my favourite.
Oh, a Zeppelin fan, outstanding. This interview is going to go swimmingly, I can just tell you. I can just tell. So, thinking about the Fractions project, I mean, initially, what was it that attracted you towards being part of it?
I have taught for a number of years, 30 odd years, and I've been predominantly teaching in upper stages, so second level, end of second level. And I've said for years that the foundations of understanding of fractions is not there. And then when we're trying further up the school to develop the children's experience and teach new concepts, they haven't a clue. My colleague, who's also part of this project, she said when she asked her class, what is a fraction? Every single child said a bit of a pizza. And it's the way that it's been taught from first level up. I don't think the children have understood it. When I asked my question to the question of what is a fraction, write everything you know about fractions, the children, first of all, looked panicked and had no concept at all of it being a number, and they couldn't see the link, even though it had been taught the link with decimals, and they couldn't see the link with percentages. So basically, for me, it was how are we going to address this? Because I often feel teaching, particularly primary 7, that I'm doing a lot of catch up. I'm having to reteach to get them to a standard that actually they're going to thrive in secondary maths departments. Mm-hmm. And it's been a big worry for a number of years. And I think fractions has been the biggest area of concern for me.
And so coming back to that then, Hazel, in terms of I suppose confidence to a certain extent, but I think in terms of you as a teacher more generally, how would you sort of describe where you find yourself now in terms of your teaching as opposed to where you would have been before you started on the project?
I've been much more open to try new things. I've found our meetings really useful from the point of view of, the theory behind the teaching of fractions. I was Googling words that I was hearing our first meeting. I've never heard that word before. And I think it was breaking down the different areas of fractions into manageable chunks that I could really delve deep with the children. So I feel now that I personally have a better understanding of the teaching of fractions and the different ways in which you can do it. But I think more to the point, because I've been really asking the children the questions, I've got a better picture of what they find impossible, what they find tricky, what they're frightened of. Mm-hmm. There's quite a lot of the children you say, and next week we're going to be learning, progressing our learning in fractions, and you just see panic, and it shouldn't be like that. But we've also, at Rothes, we're embarking on looking at using choral counting and counting collections. And that was the PowerPoint that I sent to you, Andy. Mm-hmm, and that was our first ever session of this new strategy. And I thought, I'm just going to go in at the deep end, and I could really push their thinking. The kids were discovering improper fractions by themselves. And they went, but the numerator is bigger than the denominator. What are we going to do about that? Instead of me introducing it, they were asking the questions. And I just thought that was wonderful. I was blown away by it, really. And I could see I've got quite a wide stretch of ability, pretty much early second level up to mid third level. And I could easily differentiate that learning opportunity through the counting collections activity.
And so coming back to, you talking about the learners themselves being able to engage in activities where these things that can be tricky to understand are emerging more naturally, and you're armed with that kind of knowledge of the research that underpins the development of that knowledge. I mean, how would you describe it as in terms of your sort of overall body? I mean, you mentioned you've got quite a spread of ability, but if we were to sort of come to those learners that struggle a little bit more, how would you describe the impact that your teaching in terms of what you've learned from the project has had on them?
I think because I'm breaking it down into manageable chunks and making sure that those foundations are secure, that they are able to, I suppose, absorb that and become familiar with it and confident in it, that they're then ready to take that next step. And it's making those connections go, that makes sense to me now. They didn't know they could tell me it's called a denominator, but they hadn't a clue what it did. Mm-hmm. So they were working with halves and quarters from probably primary 2, but they didn't know what that meant. They didn't know what the 2 meant. They didn't know what the 4 meant. And so it was breaking it right down to brass tacks. But I did that with everybody, even my 3rd level. I went right back to the very beginning. And then as we've progressed, I've been able to differentiate within my groups.
In terms of the whole school, are there implications moving forward in terms of how your school might look at fractions specifically from early years right the way through?
I think once this project's finished, I've shown interest in the next part of it as well. But I think we need to seriously address how fractions is introduced. Get away from chopping up pizzas. But I think, the whole theory of teaching of fractions needs to be looked at. And I don't think it's just Rothes. I think, hence your project, it's obviously been an area across Scotland, and I'm sure it's not just Scotland either, that it's been an area of concern. But what underpins it for me is they need so much understanding of, the times tables, that if they don't have that, fractions is going to be difficult. Mm-hmm. There's so many other things that link to it. They need to understand the number line. If they don't understand the number line, fractions is going to be difficult. So I think, yes, we need to focus on how we teach fractions, but I think it's our approach to number overall that we really need to look into and delve deeply into.
Yeah, that's a really, really, really interesting point you talk about there. The fact that understanding around whole numbers is obviously critical as well for fractions. I mean, one of the things that we were looking at was Steph's reorganization hypothesis. This idea that learners can take what they've developed with their whole number reasoning, and they can then apply it to fractional situations. It's just that certain things can get in the way, as we've seen. So thinking ahead, Hazel, I mean, if we were looking at running the project again next year, there's kind of 2 questions in one here. The first is, what would you say to anybody who is maybe thinking about giving it a go next year? And secondly, reflecting on your experiences so far, how do you see yourself being able to contribute to the future of this more generally, as someone who's now gone through, done the tests of change, revamped their teaching and everything else? So the 2 questions there. Be great to get your views on that.
Right. I would certainly recommend being part of the group. Apart from anything else, because of the COVID-19 situation, we've not been able to interact with other colleagues, professionals from other establishments, and to be part of the Northern Alliance in this has been fabulous. So that and alone, to create such a large learning community, I think it would be fabulous if we were able to have subgroups within it, that perhaps that we met maybe as an ESG or maybe Murray teachers only. That would be one way of perhaps delving even deeper. But I would certainly recommend it for anybody. I would definitely be interested in being part of the project again next year. But what I would like to perhaps see is that this has been very much focused on second level. Can we take it down to first level? And although I have, pretty much always taught this age group, you need to know what comes first, and you need to know where they're going. So I think it would be great to have that knowledge shared. But I think for our school improvement planning, we are going to definitely, our new school improvement planning, it's going to be approaches in teaching numeracy is going to feature in that.
And do you think that people are aware of just, how important fractions and developing good understanding in fractions is? You talked about people find it difficult, and the kids are shying away, and they're maybe thinking, oh no, I don't like fractions. But do you think that they are aware of the importance of those foundations for accessing more advanced concepts in mathematics, and indeed across the curriculum generally? Do you think there's scope to do some work around that in terms of raising awareness? Yeah,
absolutely. Because I think that this sounds like my class coming. You're going to come in very quietly, please. Very, very quietly. Pass it back. Thank you. They're just coming back. So I think that what we need to be doing there is at all times making the link with the world of work, with real life. Why are we doing fractions? Instead of just having pages and pages of examples of equivalence and fractions. Well, why do we do equivalence and fractions, and making it real so that they see it in a context, a real life context.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Finding that meaningful context that children can relate to, we know that can really help with their understanding and their learning. Absolutely, right, Hazel. I'm sure I could sit and listen all day to you talking about your passion here for maths and fractions, but you've got your class coming back, so we're going to let you get back to that. Thanks.
They might even say hello if you're lucky, Andy. You're going to say hello, Andy? Hi!
Hello, P67.
Okay, but we'll be in touch then, Andy, and I don't know what you're going to...
That's usually the response I get, Hazel.
Okay.
You have a great holiday.